It's that time again. We're going to talk about Zone of Control in Civilization 6. This is one of the most misunderstood things that I've seen about this game. I'm going to explain what Zone of Control is and how it really works. By the time we're done, I'm going to explicitly highlight one of the most common misunderstood elements around ranged units and Zone of Control. Zone of Control is an element of combat that affects the game in two important ways. First, it limits troop movements, and second, it allows attackers to put a city under siege. Let's talk about troop movement first. Troops that move into a hex that's controlled under Zone of Control by an enemy are not able to move out of the hex on the same turn, so it stops movement of that troop. You are able to still attack, but you cannot move to any other hex. When you select one of your units, any hex that is under Zone of Control by your enemy will be highlighted with these red markings around the outside edge of the hex. That means if you move into that hex, that unit will not be able to move out of that hex on this turn. Now again, it does not prevent you from attacking. You can still attack if you have movement turns left, but you cannot move out of that hex. Let's talk about the second important effect here on the game, city bombardment. A city that has all surrounding hexes controlled by enemy Zone of Control is put under siege, and that means that the city doesn't heal between turns. A city is shown to be under siege when it has a red heart next to the name. Now, the Governor Victor has a promotion that defends against siege, so if he's in a city, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to siege it if he's got that promotion. Let's talk about how Zone of Control is applied by units. Melee, cavalry, and most ship units provide Zone of Control for the hex they are in, as well as neighboring hexes. Now, mountains do not need to be covered when you're sieging a city. So if a city is backed into a mountain range, you might be able to siege a city with just one unit. Otherwise, in many cases, you're going to need at least 2 units. They can sit on opposite sides of the city from each other and each cover the hexes next to them, allowing you to cover 6 hexes with 2 units. One important thing to note is that rivers will break Zone of Control, and so a unit standing next to a river will not push Zone of Control on the hex that's on the other side of that river. So in some cases, if you've got a river there, you're going to need an additional unit to cover different sides of the river, or you're going to have to position the units so that the river creates a natural split between the 2 units and doesn't split one unit's Zone of Control. Land units and water will provide Zone of Control for the hex that they are in. So it's possible to use them to siege a coastal city, but you've got to have one in each water hex that touches that city. Most ships will provide Zone of Control for the adjacent hexes, similar to the melee units, and that might be a better choice if you're trying to siege a city that has some coastal area. One important note here, units that provide Zone of Control to neighboring hexes do not need to be right next to the city to put it under siege. You can see this Eagle Warrior covers the hex to his right. When I move him 2 hexes away, the city is no longer under siege. Now let's talk about one of the most misunderstood concepts regarding ranged units and siege units in Zone of Control. Ranged units and siege units will always provide Zone of Control for the hex that they are in. So it's possible to siege a city with just archers or catapults or their respective promotions over time. But that just means you have to surround the city. Each hex has to have one of these units in it in order to put it under siege. Now there's also a 3rd tier ability that gives ranged units Zone of Control just like a melee unit or a cavalry unit, meaning that archers' Zone of Control will extend to their neighboring hexes. Siege units do not have this additional ability, so they will only ever give Zone of Control for the hex that they're in. Now you're an expert in Zone of Control. That's everything you need to know. Use this to put cities under siege. It allows you to take the cities much faster since they're not able to heal between you attacking them and their next turn. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, drop them down below, and I'll be sure to get back to you.